The Tallarico Group has helped CEOs grow their sales and their leaders for over a decade. Founder Bill Tallarico brings you Total Growth, a podcast that explores the challenges of selling, leading, and building great relationships.
Welcome back to Total Growth. Today we're joined for the first time by a world-class athlete. We're usually joined by leaders in the world of business, and today we have someone, a friend of ours, who has achieved great success both in the world of sports and in business, Missie Berteotti. So Missie, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Bill. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit, Missie, about your background so everybody knows about your career in professional golf.
Well, I guess I'm endeavoring now into the business world. So yes, that the accolades I had in golf, I want to, that's over. So I'm here to learn and grow and do business. And but I have been an athlete most of my life. I'm middle-aged now, maybe.
Yeah. It's hard to say that, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we realize that we are.
Yeah.
Especially when I remember my parents. I'm 48, and I remember when my parents were 48. I thought, man, that's so old.
Oh.
Right?
No. It is. It changes.
Yeah.
Well, I think I have a few on you.
Yeah.
I know I have a few on you. My son's 21, so I'm an empty nester, and I had him late. So I've been an athlete all those early years. I grew up here in Upper St. Clair, went to University of Miami. I was fortunate I got a scholarship. So I work with some kids now, coaching. So it's, I did those stages of life. So it's really neat for me talking to kids. And I left the University of Miami, went straight out on tour, made that what's called a qualifying school, which is a big deal for pro golfers, and played 14 years. And it depends which day you ask me. Some days I'm really proud. Some days I'm really thinking, boy, I let a lot slip. But I played 14 years. My son's always enamored. My best ranking, I got up to 22nd in the world, and that was
incredible.
I think about it now. I know that was our world ranking one year, and I thought I was average at best. Yeah. And now as an
you were the 22nd best player in the world.
Yeah,
right.
And now sitting here, I think like, wow. You just don't have that perspective when you're younger.
Oh, it's amazing. I couldn't go out in our club outing and end up in the top 22 if the field was 25. So, to say that you were 22nd in the world at what you do, there's very few people to get to say that. And,
well,
God
thank
bless.
You.
And that didn't come naturally. I mean, obviously you had great talent and you were gifted with some type of natural talent because I think you come from a family of athletes as well. But to get to 22nd in the world takes some grind. It takes some intentionality. It takes some practice. And I think that you were very driven and had a relationship with your father as a young person to help drive you that. Can you tell us a little bit about the effort it takes to become number 22 in the world?
Yes, I coach now, like I said. I coach some young players. I'm not a full-time coach, but when you look back with hindsight and I look at myself, like I think it was a gift. It was a God's gift. I was driven. I'll tell you one thing. My father, I was about 11. I said, Daddy, I want to play with you. And he always played with his friends. He was just an average amateur. And I remember this. And my father's deceased now, but he said, no, honey, you're not good enough. Golf is just for us guys. So you think about how to motivate kids. I remember this to that day. So obviously I was very driven, but I think I was driven before that. Yeah. Perseverance. Like I had a lot of emotional ability to persevere bad shots and hang in there. And I don't know how you coach that to players.
That's so difficult. My son, he has one of those yardage books I had made for him last year.
Right.
One of the inscriptions on the inside of it is the Ben Hogan quote, right? The most important shot in golf is the next one.
Yeah.
And it's so hard for us to get that mindset as golfers or as athletes and as professionals. And, and a lot of the work we do here at the Tallarico Group is with salespeople, which you're endeavoring into your relatively newfound career in the financial services industry.
Right.
And that's so difficult to think about how many no's you get or how many difficult conversations you have. But the most important conversation we're going to have is that next one. And how do we learn from that bad shot, that bad call, or that bad interaction, but not dwell on it?
I think that's everything. And I think, I would say naturally I had that at a young age. And nowadays, I keep going back to golf. I'm sorry, keep me on business.
But we just did a video a couple weeks ago, my partner Matt Rogers on LinkedIn, where he equated the similarities between golf and sales, right? And in golf, you're in the woods And the smart thing to do is just punch out and take your medicine. But no, we think, well, I hit one in the woods, but it's pretty easy for me to lace one through these 3 trees and then cut a fade.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not going to do that. Take your medicine. So, you can't wait till the end of the quarter and hope to hit a home run through 5 trees and hit that miracle shot. It's about that persistence and the grind.
Right. It really is. What statistics, what's the actual probability that I can lace it through there versus, so it's risk reward. Decision making is huge in golf. Yeah. Having that ability to manage your emotions, to not make bad decisions in the moment. That 8 seconds or so when you have before you need to get over there and pull the trigger is, you need to be sharp. So, like I said, as a kid, I think emotionally somehow I did it innately, maybe, and I honestly, just
there's great lessons though. You talk about that 8 seconds, the shot, and I think as sales professionals, we're in those moments. We're in that moment of the call,
right.
And somebody throws us a curveball, like, oh, by the way, we're getting other pricing, or we're cutting budgets and we're not so sure there's going to be room for you in next year's budget, or and you get hit with these curveballs or these shocking conversations, right? How do you stay in the moment and not react emotionally?
I think that's a skill. I think people wrongly, golfers, they say like, I'm not wired that way. You can't default yourself. You can't exclude yourself from learning to act appropriately in those moments because you're not, quote, wired that way. Yeah. You may have we all may have predispositions. Maybe you have a short fuse. Maybe you're an extrovert versus an introvert versus an extrovert. Whatever your predispositions are, I think you have to, I'm saying this now as an older, I absolutely learned this in college and on the tour. When I was younger, I just did things. But when you realize who you are, if you're hot-tempered, then you have to take the responsibility of, whatever it is, taking a breath, looking up, little mannerisms to hang in there in that moment and keep that moment alive. Yeah. Whether it's while you're over the putt or on that. Now I'm more on those calls, and now it's exciting for me to try to transform these environments.
Well, it's funny because when you mentioned standing over a putt, so if you stood over a 3-foot putt today, or when you were number 22 in the world, right? If you were over a 3-foot putt that was meaningful and it was going to impact your place in the tournament, if it was for a win, my guess is in most cases you feel pretty good. You feel pretty confident in yourself about that, right?
Yes.
You like your odds.
Yeah.
You know why you like your odds? It's because the muscle memory. Because how many of those 3-foot, when you go to the average amateur, when you stand over a putt, what do we do before a round? As an average amateur, we take 3 balls down, we drop them on the putting green, and I start from 30 feet because, first of all, how many 30-foot putts am I going to have in a day? Not many. I have a lot of long putts, but not many that I'm going to make from 30 feet.
Right.
And you roll 3, maybe 6 putts, and I'm good to go. Where the professional, I had an opportunity to go to Oakmont a couple years ago when the Open was here.
Oh, yeah.
And, you watch these guys on the green, on these professionals who are competing at the highest level in the world, and they start from 1 foot, and, then they go to 3 feet, and they spend most of their time in close. Right. Because they're going to, and that's muscle memory. And it's, in sales, it's the same thing. We need that muscle memory of either with experience it comes, with role playing, or even with just the mindset of what am I going to do when this happens and preparing yourself for that. So
I think that role playing is huge. Mm-hmm. So like, how do I practice my conversational skills now as a financial professional? Right. It's all about being with my client, absorbing what he or she tells me and giving her an answer that she can trust and believe. Yeah. And that's, so it's how do you role play that? That's hard to simulate. Same as in golf. Like, it's hard on a Tuesday out in a public golf course when no fans are around to role play what it feels like on the 72nd. So it takes a little bit of preparation, try to figure it out.
Well, there was a study done. I don't know if you are familiar with this, but there was a study of some sociologists where they worked with basketball players.
Oh, yeah, I love this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so they took the basketball players and broke them into 3 groups, and they said to the first group, okay, we want you to practice shooting free throws every day for an hour.
Okay.
Right? Then the second group, they said, don't touch a basketball for 30 days, but think about shooting free throws for an hour. So in your mind, go through the form, your form, go through the mechanics and everything, right?
Yeah.
Then they took the third group C, and they said, don't think about basketball for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, they came back, and of course, they had their baseline and what they did the 30 days before. Well, Group A improved. They're the ones that shot free throws for an hour a day. They improved by 24%.
Okay.
Group C, as you would imagine, that didn't think about basketball or touch a basketball for 30 days, they regressed.
Okay.
They saw a great drop. Group B, who didn't touch a basketball, but in their mind role played, worked on mechanics, and did all those things in their mind's eye for 30 days.
Yeah.
They improved by 23%, I think. So
1%
almost as
less,
dramatic
yeah.
as the one who actually did it. And
Yeah.
that's the power of the mind. And I think you've had some insight into that, Missy, because enough insight that it drove you to write a book, right?
Yeah.
Called Mental Mastery.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you see this in the camera? I don't know if you can. It's quick. That's everything. I think if we can learn to practice that way, it's so effective. And I recognize, I raised a child. I coach a lot of kids. I was a kid. It's patience. Who wants to not touch a ball? We want to touch a ball. It's just having the discipline and the patience to put yourself through these mental exercises, and which ones are right. So when I learned these things the hard way on tour. I feel like I learned them too slowly. It took me too long. I spent a lot of money with sports psychologists way back when. But I did feel like, I learned some really invaluable lessons. So when I stopped playing, when I started teaching kids, like those kids can tap into what took me blood, sweat, and tears to learn. So passing those lessons on, when I have a young player who wants that, and has that desire, that makes kind of what I went through feel worth it, that he can use it, because I'm done. I'm done with my golf career. So that's been great. And I had my son's in the tennis program, and some of those tennis kids were not doing well one day, and the coach yelled at the kids and said, I need somebody to talk to you kids about this. And I was just a parent sitting on the bench, and the coach turned around and said, can you help our kids? And that gave me the incentive I went back, I had notebooks of stuff for myself. And so I just really summarized all these notebooks from the greatest pros, teaching pros, psychologists, and I taught a course to kids. So it was so great. It was a 6-week course. We sat in a classroom, exactly just your scenario. We had balls. We had plastic balls or a tennis racket or a basketball. We enacted scenarios. But basically, we had a few of the mechanics with the balls and whatever props. But we basically went through and role played with our eyes shut or whatever. We did them indoors, and all those kids, it's been so great watching them tell me how that helped them personally, professionally, sports-wise. But nobody teaches that to our kids.
That's astonishing. I mean, to me, I love that because, our entire practice is built around how do we help people become better versions of themselves, whether it's as a salesperson.
I love that pursuit. I love that.
Well, I can't claim origin of that. Comes the first time I ever heard that phrase came from Matthew Kelly, who's a wonderful author.
I've read some of his, not much, but
he's incredible. Yeah, and he wrote his first book I think at 18, and he's written 40, 50 books or. But he has an organization now called Dynamic Catholic, and
I'm gonna have to write that down.
It's great. Yeah, I mean his books are incredible. And in one of his books, The Rhythm of Life, he asserts this concept of becoming the best version of yourself. And he feels that so many of us become hamsters on the wheel, essentially, of just this activity that we forget about why we're doing the things we're doing. And it's for us to become the best version of ourselves, and not for me to be a second-rate version of Missie Berteotti, or for anybody else to be a second-rate version of me. As I always tell my clients, the first-rate version isn't that hot, so why do we want to be a second-rate version of me, right? But this idea of the mental mastery that goes behind what we do, and the thing that struck me is when you said you went back to your notebooks and your journals, and you said I had all these notes from great people. Well, to get those, it means you were on a pursuit, this never-ending pursuit of becoming the best version of yourself from an early age that allowed you to accumulate that stuff.
Yeah. Again, I'll just keep talking as a 56-year-old with hindsight. I'm so grateful that I had that pursuit, that I had that, the carrot always pulling me, because I I think you learn about yourself as an individual, as a human. You learn about persistence. You learn about emotionally, like, getting beat up and getting embarrassed and getting humiliated, getting and how to come back from that. So a lot of those things I talked about in that book are just, it's not how you hold the club. Everybody can hold the club. It sounds so corny. I don't mean to sound corny, but it's kind of like the 80-20 rule. Tony Robbins is I used to listen to his cassette tapes when I was in college and sit there and do
Unleash the power within.
Oh, that was so good back then. Personal something, I forget.
Yeah.
But he always says 80-20. So 80% is the psychology we bring to it, the human skills. 20% is how you hold the club.
That's
20% is what you say to your client on the phone. But 80% is, are you with this guy? Do you look him in the eye? Do you thank him? Do you follow up? Do you do what you say? Oh, simple things.
Well, everything you said there too is about being authentic.
Yeah.
And there's, in a world of fakery, I think that, being authentic is lost. And authenticity is that it's so attractive, I think, to people, and people sense it. And, especially in your industry, people are going to work with you because of who you are, right? And how authentic you are and how much they trust you. And I always say to every client we have, no matter what your industry, we're all selling the same product, and it's trust.
Wow. I like that.
We're selling trust. And, for people that work with you, they're making a decision of whether they trust you to help their family, help them and help their family get to where they want to go, right? And, please don't take this the wrong way, but, there's a lot of stuff in the financial services industry that kind of automates things, or, that it's not going to be so dramatically different from one firm to the next. It's about who do you trust?
Right.
And how authentic is that person? How much they care about you and your family versus how much they care about themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're somebody who I think is authentic and cares about others.
I hope so. I really hope I hope so. I think there's easier ways I could make money, or if that was my goal.
Right.
But I think a little bit of financial success I've had early in life has allowed me to really think about, like, what do I want to do next? I have some freedom.
Yeah.
I could, so I love that. I like you were talking about the young kids that I teach. I love that. I've loved I so appreciate the respect and the trust I have from my adult clients. Like that's a gift.
Yeah.
When people, because they could go anywhere. I recognize that.
Yeah, but it's all about that trust, right? And it comes down to anything. And I think that, you mentioned earlier something about golf, and it's about the 80% mental, 20% physical. And, I remember my son playing in his first tournament. He, as a younger guy, it was probably 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago. And I took him to Florida for one of these hurricane tour tournaments. And I was speaking at a conference in Florida, and just so happened there was a tournament going on. And I said, why don't you come with me? And this is a great deal. I'm going to be there for 3 days. You could come along and you go to the tournament while I'm doing my speaking gig and all that. So I went and watched him on the first day because I had some time, and he's all excited, and he had been geared up, and we got up at 5:30 in the morning. He goes out and he grinds, and he had like a 7 o'clock tee time, 7:30 tee time. And he gets on the first hole, first shot in competitive play, and he pushes one OB right. And he goes up to that and does something and does something and does something else, right? And he plunks one in the water, and he hits one off the wall of the water. And so he ends up carding a 13.
Oh, in his first hole?
In his first competitive hole.
Oh.
And go on a tour, right? And, when you're all by yourself out there.
That got you. That's like.
Yeah. Whew. When you take a 13, you have parents standing around and watching, doing these things. It takes a lot to go to the second tee.
Right.
And he did.
Absolutely.
And he did. And he grinded out the day. And, he didn't have his best day. But I told him, I said, I will never be as proud of you as I was. No matter what you do, I will never be as proud of you as I was when you walked up to that second tee.
I'll give you a high
right?
Totally.
With your head held up high, because it would have been real easy for him to look and say, oh, you know what? I think I pulled something, or I hurt something, or I'm done, or let's go. And we see that in salespeople all the time too, right? It takes something for a salesperson to be hanging a 0 on the board and to continue to persist.
Yeah.
Especially in these times, we're living through with COVID and everything else, where deals aren't as plentiful as they once were. And it takes a grind for people to be successful.
Yeah. I so agree with what you just said about that story. As a dad, I would have been, would have felt 8 feet tall. Yeah. That's fantastic what your son did.
Well, and I don't know. I always say, I don't know if it just, I have some of that in me too. And I don't know if it comes from courage or just stupidity, but I think, it's whatever it is, you just keep going because.
I'd say the first.
I hope, courage. It's just because there's something in front of us and we need that as professionals, as salespeople, to have that courage. We talk about being brave one question at a time. When you fall into these situations, these situations and these settings where, someone across the table can be intimidating, or it can be a presence, or, for young people who are selling to executives for the first time, right? How do you get there? Well, you can't go out and just card a score. It's the grind, right? In golf, it's every hole, and in sales, it's every question. So just being brave one question at a time and getting to that next one.
Oh, I like that a lot.
And just get, like you have to walk up to the tee after a double bogey or a 13,
That's a pretty good story. That's gonna be fodder or whatever. That's gonna be a subject he's gonna talk about for the rest of his life.
Yeah, and hopefully that comes with a good ending, right? But whatever that ending, I think the second tee was a good ending.
Exactly. So the ending already happened.
There's life lessons there, and I think we have those in sales settings, and we have those as leaders every day, where it's the next encounter. And too often as people we beat ourselves up. But we were talking in my men's group last week about forgiveness. This concept of forgiveness and who do we need to forgive, and everybody's talking about all these other people we need to forgive. And I posed a question to the group and I said, how about ourselves?
Oh my gosh.
How many of us just might need to forgive ourselves? And that's something I've struggled with, most of my adult life and maybe most of my life in general, is that, that self-love and that self-forgiveness that comes and is so important and so critical, yet so few of us can do. And in the golf course, how do you forget the last hole? And as a professional, how do you forget the last mistake?
Yeah. That is huge. I don't even know if we have enough time to get into it.
That's right.
I'll tell you what, this might be sexist, but I think it's great what the men's group talks about that. I think we talked a teeny bit before this interview about Brené Brown. She's somebody I've listened to. She's pretty famous. Oprah kind of introduced her to the world, but she talks about shame and vulnerability and humility and authenticity. And she really popular. I can't say that word.
Popularized?
She really made that popular.
Peculiar. I can't say that word peculiar. So popularized.
Yeah, that's huge. So where were we? Forgiveness is. I think the fact that I think women more talk to each other about things like that. Maybe that's a generalization, but I think it's great men do, and especially young boys that I teach at golf. It's hard to cough that up. It's hard to get over it. It really is. But I think when you have a coach, whether it's a financial coach, whether it's a golf coach, puts it on the table. See, listen, I know you screwed up yesterday. Can you let go of that? Can you forgive yourself? I've forgiven you. Can you forgive yourself? If you just voice that out loud to them, looking at them, that hits them.
Oh. And for us, that concept of forgiveness, it's easier for some if they have a faith background or, I was raised Catholic. I've been Catholic my whole life. And I love the concept of the sacrament of reconciliation, confession, where you go in, it's one I take advantage of a lot because I need it. That's what happens when you make a lot of mistakes. But, that concept of forgiveness is easy to think about coming from someone else.
Yeah.
It's easier to maybe accept forgiveness. And for many of us, it might be easier to give forgiveness to people. But it's so hard to sometimes give it to yourself or to accept it. And that holds so many people back, this concept of perfection. And I've talked before, the best parenting advice I ever received came from my coach. And she said, you have to parent the child you have, not the one you want or the one you were. I was like,
or the one you were. Wow.
Yeah, and so many of us parent the child we were.
Yeah.
And like my poor son, he'd be 6 and go for a cookie or something. Like, you have no self-control, because in my mind I'm seeing all the mistakes I made in college, and over-consuming alcohol or whatever it might be. And as leaders, we tend to, I always share with sales leaders or with leaders in general, we have to lead the team we have, not the one we want or the one we were. And for salespeople, sales managers, we tend to manage the ones we were. versus the ones we have, and we don't connect with people on what motivates them. And I hear you talking about, as a golf coach, how you connect with these kids and understand or connect with these people, young people, about understanding what motivates them and what's going to drive them versus coaching, Missy at 13.
I can't agree with you more. I think it's everything. It doesn't matter what I know. Just because I played pro golf, just because I made a few birdies, they don't care. They don't, they, especially I think this younger generation. I'm sure every generation has said that, but it's all about, a lot of times I don't even feel like I coach. If all I do is listen, all I do is ask them a question and let them talk. So sometimes I feel like, maybe I'm just not, I have so much I can say, but they don't need to hear that. They need to do exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, well, questions are the most underused and underutilized tool of leaders. And we get people to great outcomes as leaders with questions. And, I always like to share with those we coach in an executive coaching capacity, what they have to tell us is much more important than what we have to tell them.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Right? We control encounters with the questions we ask and not the answers we give. So that's pretty critical and great that you're using questions to draw out of people, which is, the word educate. Educare, right? And you were speaking Italian to me before, so you probably have a little familiarity with the Latin, right? Educare is to draw out of, and that's what great educators do.
I think that's so important. I think that's so important. I don't know. I don't know what more to say about that. I just think it's just being able to be with, read people,
and connect with them.
Yeah, I was lucky, but years near the end of my tour season, I met some golf coaches who lead with this. It's all about that. So, and they got a lot of criticism when they started their coaching business. It was kind of funny. Everybody wants to talk about where you put your left thumb, how many times you dial the phone. Like that stuff is not the heart. Right. So I agree with you, and I think it's having the guts to do it. Like you talk about being vulnerable as a golf coach, like I'm leading with nothing other than just asking a simple question. Yeah. But I think having the guts to just, really put it to them, that takes something. That takes a little bit of presence. Yeah. Takes a little bit of just confidence in our subject material. I know their terrain. I know where they're going. They don't need all this information. They need that knowing of themselves. So if they answer that question, they're learning about themselves. And that's a lot.
So you just mentioned mastering the terrain and you're saying how you understand and they know that you understand the terrain, and you think about the terrain and the topography and the course map and all that in golf and how many similarities there are and the parallels that has to your new role it's not that new, but relatively new role of helping clients navigate that family plan and that family terrain of where they're heading for their security and future.
Yes, yeah. I guess the simplest way I could wrap all that up is, I'm as egotistical, I guess, as the next guy. We all think we can do it on our own, but a coach, I've had a million coaches, a lot of coaching. So my golf coach, as far as terrain, not literally, but where are the pitfalls as a golf touring pro? Like as a collegiate player, what's the terrain ahead of you? What's the landscape? Where are you going to mess up? Are you going to, most people complain about their putting all the time, blah, blah, all the typical pitfalls that a golf coach would know and can kind of give you a little preparation as a player, and you can maybe navigate those better. Make your down, your what am I trying to say? Your
bad lies.
Your bad times. Your
the
slumps.
Valleys,
Your slumps, make them shorter because we're going to have some slumps.
That's right.
But the same as in financial, what I find and what's subtle, it's more communication in the financial world. I think people act like they know their terrain, the landscape in front of them, but I don't think they do as well as they think they do. My job is to communicate that in a professional way that doesn't make you wrong.
Right.
And say, with all due respect, Mr. Tallarico, we've retired X number of people. We've seen kind of where perhaps it could go off the rails. Yeah. I'd like you to consider this. It might be worth having somebody along your side along by your side. So it's that message. It's tough to say that. It's tough love. You know, with all due respect, like, you know, like I said, I'm not even as a parent, I talked to a lot of parents when I was coaching their kids. I'm not saying I'm the best parent in the world, but I can see a little bit more perspective than this one dad, can see towards his son.
You know, you're emotionally involved in that point.
Yeah.
That's that power of being emotionally disengaged,
detached, exactly.
Emotionally detached. And, you know, a great quote on leadership or coaching comes from Tom Landry. And Tom Landry said, a great coach gets the people to do the things they don't want to do so they can achieve the things they want to achieve. And so much of what you're doing today is that, you know, getting people to focus on making some of those short-term sacrifices and having that future orientation versus that present orientation of just living in the moment.
Yeah, it's hard to address that.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know, I'm going to talk a little bit too, Missy, about a story you told me last week in a conversation we had, and I found it amazing. It touched me, and I was, for a few reasons, which I'll mention probably when you're done. But you had shared with me about how when you were on tour, there were a few times where you would miss a cut and you would do something unique on a weekend that most people didn't do. And can you tell us a little bit about what you did on those weekends when you missed a cut?
I think you're referring, I know, yes. Mm-hmm. That was tough. It was humiliating, I guess.
Tell us what you did.
Well, I finally got myself to the point, you know, I thought I was good, but I knew I was missing something. Mm-hmm. And I decided Annika Sorenstam happened to be one of the tops when I was playing. And I thought, you know, if I missed the cut, I'd leave. And she'd be out there playing 2 historic rounds in front of everybody who would watch it except me, because I had this chip on my shoulder or I was upset. So I finally, I forced myself. I said, go out there, see what she does. So I walked the course. I followed her as a fan. So I was behind the ropes, which is tough as a tour player. You know, you're supposed to be in front, in between the ropes. So I guess if you want to call it humble or whatever the word is. But
there were a few times you said where you missed that cut and then you got to the point where you forced yourself to stay for the weekend.
Yes.
And walk the course with Annika or that final group.
Right.
And what were you looking for when you were doing that? What was the purpose?
Yeah, you know, I did. And probably maybe you hear the word blind spots here and there. We don't know what we don't know. Like I knew, I didn't know. I didn't know, but I just wanted to see her, see what she was doing. Like I knew I could play great on a Thursday or a Friday, but why couldn't I play as well as her on a Sunday? What was she? What was it? Was she breathing better? What was she doing? So I just wanted to hang out and watch her, and I did. You know, with that, so maybe a lengthy story, but she looked like she was playing on a Tuesday, and this was Sunday in front of you know the crowds, like as big as crowds as we get. But she was so committed to her process, whatever you want to call it, her routines. I saw her every day on the practice screen, and I was just really blown away how her commitment was it was just unbelievable.
So people always talk about great athletes, you know, the Annika Sorenstams, the Tom Brady's, the whoever, and how the game moves slower for them.
Yeah.
Right? And I bet when you watched her, was she just in a place where nothing was coming at her that she didn't feel she couldn't handle, just in that state of calm?
Yeah, like I obviously can't feel what she's, you know, her psychology. Like I know sometimes I look normal to people and I was a mess inside. So I don't know what she was like inside, but she sure looked at like all her manner, all the things that sports psychologists tell you to do to just, you know, be able to be in the moment as far as breathing, as far as just, you know, looking around, things like that, looking at the tops of the trees, talking to your caddy, whatever it was to get you out of your internal dialogue that could be pulling you down. She did unbelievably.
Well, it's funny because we talk about that with salespeople. You know, first of all, the thing you had to embrace, 2 great qualities of a leader that you had to embrace to be able to do that, is vulnerability and humility. Right? You know, because how much vulnerability did it take for you to walk on the outside of the ropes?
Yeah,
it
was not fun. It was not fun.
Especially because they, you know, many of the fans that would have been there saw you a day earlier or 2 days, and they're like, wait.
They come up to you like, what are you doing here? You know, you gotta. So anyway, yes, you're right. It did,
because it wasn't anonymity. You know, you weren't out there in an anonymous fashion, right? They knew who you were, and they saw that, and it takes great humility. You know, that vulnerability and humility to go out and do that. And one of the, I think the greatest definition of humility I've ever heard, it comes to me from a Benedictine monk, actually, who's a friend of mine, Father Boniface Hicks. And he says that humility is seeing yourself as God sees you. And we always say with leaders, we talk about our clients about that means seeing ourselves as we truly are. So humility is seeing ourselves as we truly are. And, people talk about these blind spots. So how to say, okay, here's my gap. I'm not good at this. How do I embrace it and let my people know that I know? Because that's the funny thing is like the things that we're afraid to be humble about.
People already know.
They know. It's not like we're, we think we got this great scam going. Like nobody knows that. And for me, it's like if I tell you something and I don't write it down in my book, it's not getting done. I talk, I make these commitments and I forget about them sometimes. So if I don't write it down in my planner, it's not getting done. Everybody knows that. So it's not like me bringing that up to my colleagues, my partners.
Right.
They're like, wow, Bill, we're everybody knows that, right?
Yeah,
But that humility that it takes to be authentic to who you are, and the humility that it took you, I think, to go out and be willing to get better, right? To say, I'm going to get through the embarrassment that might exist on the outside of these ropes so that I can get better. You think about how we translate that into great business success. And you think about if I'm a sales guy and I'm inside of an organization and there's great people achieving great things, am I humble enough to look at what they're doing and learn from them? As a young person, I wasn't.
Wow.
And as a young person, I would look at those people that were having great success, but were doing things differently than I would have done them. And I didn't have the courage of the character, the comfort with who I was to say, there's something good there I can learn from.
Yeah.
I would try to say, they're not as smart as me, or they're not, the arrogance. Well, guess who's putting big numbers on the board? Them. Guess who's hanging up zeros, right? Me. Yeah. So, and as a young salesperson who, if there is young salespeople out there listening, or any salesperson listening, learn from those that are having success. And I think that goes for leaders as well. There's many ways to be successful. You look in golf, there's many different swings, right?
Right.
Learn from those who are doing things well.
I think you're dead on. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't agree with you more. And I think as a newer, I am a sales professional. It sounds funny to even say. I partner. I think because of my sports background, I'm probably too humble or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I want the mentoring within my company. I recognize. I probably better recognize who I am as a financial professional and what I don't have better than I did back, as you said, as a golf professional. I thought I was really better than I was. Mm-hmm. So I bring in people with me. I share a partner that I work with all the time with my client. I want that. I want my client to have the best of it. So
that's great.
I guess I learned that about myself. I don't even think it's not as humiliating. It's not humiliating at all anymore, but it was back then.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know why we put that pressure on ourselves as young people to have all the answers. But, what do they say, Missy? Youth is wasted on the young. And if we could add this knowledge, right, or this perspective at 22, life might have been a little easier. I might have had an easier couple decades called my 20s and 30s. But anyways, well, hey, Missy, it's been great learning a little bit about your past and learning from you and some of your great experiences.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being with us. And, good luck to all those young people you're working with. May they achieve all their dreams. And for those who are listening, can you spell your name? Because I know it's a little unique if somebody wants to find you on LinkedIn or find you on your LFG website. So
okay, thank you. Yes, I'm at Leutner Financial Group. So I'm Missie, Missie, and the last name is Berteotti. But I appreciate it. I love being connected to people. This is how I want to serve right now. I feel like I can walk, like I said, walk along with people, and I appreciate it very much.
Well, it's I think you tell that story about your weekend experiences, and when you, on those, you had many times you held a trophy, right, and many times you had an opportunity to cash a check, but I'm sure that those weekend experiences of walking outside the ropes were as impactful on your career as the weekend on the inside of the ropes, right?
The fact that I remember it, I can tell you exactly what I saw right now today, and that was, I don't even know, 25 years ago. That tells you something impacted
something
me.
good
Yeah,
there,
I
right?
can remember it exactly. So
Well, for all your clients who are out there in the ropes, and they're in the
In the
ropes of life, and they're struggling to
step
get
back
through,
and take
yeah,
some perspective.
yeah, they're lucky to have you
Ah.
walking on the outside of the ropes with them and helping
Thanks
guide them
a
to the
lot.
end. So thank you for being with us, and good luck to you, and thank you for your wisdom and being with us today.
Thank you.
All right, take
Glad
care,
to.
Missy.
Thank
All right,
you.
God
Bill.
bless.
Same.